I'd like to do now is to go ahead and introduce our two panelists this afternoon. First, you will be hearing from Dr. Brandon Kochenauer, who is our SMART Deputy Program Manager. Prior to this role, Dr. Kochenauer spent over 16 years as a researcher at the Naval Air Warfare Center in Patuxent River, Maryland. Dr. Kochenauer is also a SMART scholar. We will also be hearing from Ms. Dima Kalnin, who is our SMART Administrative Support. Ms. Kalnin has provided administrative support to our SMART team for more than 3 years, and she's worked in multiple positions across the team. Currently, she works as a communications specialist for our outreach team. A couple of quick administrative notes before we go ahead and dive right in. If you're using a phone line, please make sure that your audio is linked back. If you get dropped, don't worry, you can just dial back in. You're all muted upon entry, but you will have an opportunity to ask questions during our Q&A session, which will take up the majority of this afternoon's webinar. If for whatever reason you don't have an opportunity to have your question answered during this afternoon's session, don't worry, you can always send your question to smart@smartscholarship.org. Again, that's smart@smartscholarship.org in the event that you cannot have your question answered during this afternoon's session. Okay, before I turn it over to Dr. Kochenauer, what we'd like to do is just launch a quick poll to find out whether or not you have attended a SMART webinar this year yet or not. So we're gonna go ahead and launch that poll right now. You should see that on your screen. If you don't, there's a polls button in the Zoom webinar controls. So again, there's a poll that just launched. Looks like everybody's seeing it. Looks like about 90%, Dr. Kochenauer and Dima, of no. Folks have not attended a webinar yet this year. About 90% have not, and about 10% have. So we're gonna go ahead and end that polling. Share those results so you can see that right there. That's our final tally. And with that being said, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to you, Dr. Kochenauer. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Greg. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us here this afternoon. Before we get into the application and some helpful tips and some Q&A sessions, just wanted to spend a few quick minutes in going over some basics of the SMART program. We'll start with the eligibility requirements. So if this is your first introduction to the SMART program, you must be a U.S. citizen to be a scholar and 18 years of age or older when you apply. You must also be pursuing a degree in one of 21 STEM disciplines that are listed on our website, and you must be currently enrolled in a institution of higher education in one of those STEM disciplines when you apply. So for high school students who may be turning 18 of age or older but are still in high school, those students are typically not eligible until they begin their freshman year. Because we are a merit-based scholarship program, we require a minimum 3.0 cumulative GPA, both as an admission to the program and as continued progress through the program to maintain that minimum GPA. We are also a scholarship for service program. So in addition to your scholarship benefits, you must be willing to accept accept employment post-graduation with a DoD lab or facility. Another feature of the program is that that DoD lab will host summer internships for you while you're pursuing your degree. And of course, as a DoD-sponsored scholarship and something that eventually leads to employment with the DoD, you must have the ability to obtain and maintain a minimum secret security clearance. We also require that your scholarship period lasts at least 1.5 years can, for graduate students, extend up to 5 years. And that 1.5 years is really to give you the opportunity to make sure that you have at least one summer to do an internship. So most of our undergraduate scholars who maybe do the 1.5 year minimum required will have that that scholarship sort of in their junior year that gives them the fall, the spring, an internship in the summer, and then at least one more semester in the fall. Okay, next slide. So what do we offer? SMART will pay full tuition and fees, again, up to 5 years. It doesn't matter where you go to school, state school, private school, what state you're in, where you're at, as long as it's an accredited university and you're getting a STEM degree. There's no cap on tuition. We also provide a stipend anywhere from $25,000 if you're an undergraduate, all the way up to $38,000 a year for PhD students, and also an allowance for books and health insurance. Again, I mentioned the internships. You'll be asked to perform anywhere from a 10 to 12 week internship in the summer. And during that internship period, you're learning about your sponsoring facility, the kind of work that they do, getting familiar with the type of science and technology that goes on there. You'll be paired up with a mentor at that sponsoring facility. And that is designed to help ease that transition into post-graduation employment, so that when you're done with your internships and you're done with your degree, you're really able to hit the ground running on day one. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the program if you're not familiar. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so before I pass things over to Dima, who's going to talk a little bit more about the application portal, I want to put up another quick poll just to get a sense on where everyone is at in the application process. So Greg, if you can throw that up for everyone. And the first question is, have you started an application yet on the portal? And if so, what sections have you not yet completed? All right, how are things looking? Okay, great. So about 3/4 of you have already started an application. And looking through sections that you haven't yet completed, yeah, personal statements, that's always a big one. We're going to talk about that today. References, we'll talk about that today as well. And if you have some other specific questions on some of these other areas that you'd like some tips on, we can get that in the Q&A. Okay, great. That's really helpful. So right now I'm going to pass things over to Dima. Dima, as Greg mentioned, is a member of our outreach team, and she is our resident guru on all things application portal related. So Dima's going to walk you through some helpful tips and logistics on what you need to be aware of when you're in the portal and getting things wrapped up. Dima, over to you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. So I know a majority of you have already started an application, so the next few slides will look a little bit familiar. For those who have not started an application yet, just keeping in mind that you still have time to apply. The deadline is December 1, so do keep that in mind. In order to start your application, you'll want to go to smartscholarship.org. You'll click on Apply Now, and you'll have to first fill out a registration form. Once you fill out that form, you'll get an email with login credentials and a link to the application portal, which we'll then see in the next slide. So again, for many of you who have already started your application, this should look pretty familiar. This is the first page that you'll see once you log into your account and access your application portal. So a few things to keep in mind. You'll first notice that you can monitor the status of your application under your name. So in this case, it says test applicant, and right under is the status. So once you submit your application, that will change from in progress to submitted. Then you'll see different tiles that for sections that you'll need to go in and complete. So first you'll want to review the application instructions, which are also available on our website to read through. And those detail every section of the application and what you'll need to fill out. For review program materials, you'll be able to find all of our application tip videos and a few other webinar recordings from our previous webinars. The About Me section is just your basic contact information, very simple to fill out as well. For submit test scores, so keep in mind that this year test scores are optional. So whether you include them in your application or not, that will not impact your evaluation process. So test scores will not be evaluated as a part of your application process this year. So again, those are optional. Then you'll see you'll need to submit a minimum of 2 references. So you'll want to make sure that you're contacting your references prior to putting in their information in your application. That way, they'll be expecting an email from the program. Sometimes emails can get lost, whether they aren't aware that they're expecting one, or it might go into their spam or junk folder. So keep that in mind. It's always good to make that initial contact with your reference providers. And again, you need a minimum of 2 references to include in your application in order for your application to be considered complete. And then the begin application section is the larger portion of your application. So that's where you'll include information about your academic background, your professional experiences, you'll upload your unofficial transcripts, you'll include your personal statements, and fill up other basic information about yourself, why you want to be a SMART scholar, and some of your experiences with STEM or with the DoD if it applies to you. So then if you go to the next slide, so a couple important things to note. When you are at a point where you're ready to submit your application, there will be 2 different sections where you'll need to click that submit button. So the first image on the left-hand side here is the larger portion of your application. So as I mentioned earlier, this is where you'll have your academic background information, you'll upload your unofficial transcripts, your resume, you'll include your personal statements as well and other information, keeping in mind that it would be beneficial to save your personal statement or maybe start it in a Word document first. That way, if you wanted to have it proofread by an advisor or professor, you have that also saved just for your records, and then you can copy paste it into our application itself. So once every section is complete with a check mark, as you see here on the left, and the progress bar is at 99%, you'll then see a button that appears at the bottom of the page to submit this section. So keep in mind, when you submit this section, you won't have access to it after, and you won't be able to make any changes. So make sure you're taking your time and you're reviewing every section before you submit this specific section of the application. So once you submit and that part is done, you'll see on the right side, image 2 takes you back to your application portal. And in this example, all of the sections have been filled out, and there is a checkbox or a check mark in every box for each task that was complete. You'll notice for the references, there's a clock icon that appears. So you can still submit your application even if your reference providers have not uploaded their letters of recommendation. So that's what that clock icon represents. Once your reference providers upload their letters, there will be a check mark. But as long as everything else in your application is complete and you've included the information of at least 2 reference providers, you'll see another submit my application button, and that will then, once your application is complete, you'll be able to click that button and fully submit your application. So once you submit, I mentioned earlier that the larger portion of your application, you can't go back and view or make any edits. However, you can go back and make edits to only 2 sections in the application, the About Me and the Reference section. Keeping in mind that if you need to make any edits to the reference contact information as far as the email address, You'll need to delete the entry and then add a new reference with the updated email address. So that is a majority of what you need to know and how to submit the application, keeping in mind there are two different areas. I will turn it back to Dr. Kochenauer so that he can provide a few application tips that might be helpful for your process as well.
Okay, thanks, Dima. So there are two sections here that I want to talk about a little bit before we open things up to Q&A. One is references and one is personal statements. And these are always areas that seem to hold applicants up the most in really kind of getting over that hurdle to a complete application. So with the references, one of the things to keep in mind is really sort of who makes a good reference and what experiences are panelists and reviewers looking for when they read these letters of recommendation. And really the best kind of reference is someone that can speak to both your technical acumen, your leadership potential, and your future ambitions, and to be able to kind of weave those three things together to get a sense of your potential as a future DoD scientist and engineer. So that might be a professor that you've maybe done some research or a junior or senior project with, that's been able to sort of interact with you a little bit more beyond just a classroom setting. If you've done any internships before, we'd love to hear from your managers and mentors at those internships, especially if they're a DoD-sponsored internship and you've already been in the DoD lab somewhere. They might be a professor who's mentored an engineering club or a robotics club or a coding club or something like that. Not everybody will have those experiences, and that's okay. So you can also look for professors that maybe you've had repeat courses with, who speak to your abilities. Maybe professors who have, maybe you've only taken one course with them, but you've really enjoyed it and maybe had some interactions with them after class or in the hallways or during office hours, things like that. If you're a freshman applicant, obviously you haven't really had a lot of time, especially in this strange environment that we're in this semester, to kind of cultivate those relationships. So hearing from maybe former high school students or guidance counselors or mentors of engineering or science clubs that have interacted with you in similar ways in the past would also be really helpful. It is less helpful to hear from family members or neighbors, even if they're associated with the Department of Defense. Yes, they might be able to speak to your sort of personal character and be coming with the experience of being a DoD scientist or an active duty military member themselves, but they really haven't interacted with you in that technical capacity to offer that insight that really allows your application, your references to sort of stand above. So keep that in mind. So I talked a little bit about, who makes good references, but then there's also that part of how do you actually get from identifying a person to getting them to write the reference and have it submitted. So here is where a lot of communication on your hand is really necessary. So identify those people, have a conversation with them beforehand. Don't just necessarily assume that because you've gone into the portal and inputted their email address into the portal and the system fires off an automated email for them to write a letter of recommendation, that maybe they're aware or they're ready or they understand what it is that you're trying to do. Maybe they don't know what SMART is, right? So you've really got to have those conversations with the people that you identify ahead of time, so they have some context and they know how to craft the letter on your behalf. And then, you know, as Dima alluded to a little bit when she walked through some of the portal, you would go into the portal, you would enter their contact information. The portal would send them a request for their reference letter. And then you can go in and remind them, send them reminder letters through the portal or outside the portal, just to say, hey, just checking in on that letter of recommendation, or are you still able to turn that around for me? So following that up with some action and some communication and interaction is really key. Don't just assume that because you've identified someone that a letter is going to show up on your behalf. You've got to do a little bit of professional networking there. Okay, so the second one is the personal statements, and this is the one that I think you know, in the poll was the one that most people have not yet completed. What are we looking for when we ask for these personal statements? So you know, everyone comes to the program recognizing what a great opportunity it is, right? Great stipend, having my tuition paid for. I'm going to get internships and employment, guaranteed employment when I'm done. What's not to like about that? Keep in mind that everybody comes to the program with sort of that desire. And so what we're looking for is not necessarily, well, I think this is a really great idea and it would be a huge help if I got it, but think about the bigger context of what the SMART mission is. And it's to attract, educate, and then employ the next generation of STEM talent for DoD applications in science and technology. So you really want to be able to tie in and create a narrative of what matters to you as a scientist and engineer, and what matters to the department in terms of science and technology, and how your interests align with the interests of the department, right? So, you know, how do you do that? You can go onto the web, go to www.cto.mil, the Chief Technology Officer for the DoD, and learn about some of the big priority areas and modernization areas, broad areas that's important to the DoD. You can go and read reports and strategies online. The National Defense Strategy, which is published every so often and widely available to understand what priorities and technologies are important to the department now and in the future. All the components, Army, Navy, Air Force, other DoD also have these strategies that they publish. So there are opportunities there to link what you want to do with the DoD mission. And of course, you can always go to our website, www.smartscholarships.org, and look at all of the SMART sponsoring facilities. Go to their websites, understand the missions that they do. If you're interested in a particular geographic location, you can search for facilities within that geographic location and understand a little bit more about what they do, the types of people that they hire, and find ways to craft that narrative that allows you to stand out beyond, hey, this is a really great deal, right? Okay, I think that's all I want to say about personal statements. We'll have some more time in the Q&A as well. I think we'll go to the next slide here. Okay, so if you're not already, I'd encourage you to follow us on social media, especially now in these last couple of weeks. It will be nice to have some, to be able to see these reminders as you scroll through your feeds on deadlines for completing the application. You can go to our YouTube channel and check out some of the videos that we've made specifically for completing the application. There's some videos on who makes good references, the areas of study that we look for, eligibility, some more on personal statements, and some other good tips there. And of course, if you're always looking for more information, email us at smart@smartscholarship.org. Again, the application deadline is the 1st of December. And with that, I think we'll stop talking and give you all a chance to ask some questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Kochenauer and Dima. I must say that those videos that you could either find on our YouTube channel or on our website at smartscholarship.org under our resources page are very useful and short as well. So thanks for bringing that up, Dr. Kochenauer. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into questions. So we have a couple of broad questions that are around specifically around whether or not you need to have technical experience in order to apply. So I'd like to go ahead and read out a question that's similar to that, but it looks like there's a few around whether or not technical experience is needed in order to apply. So Benjamin asks, if we have very little relevant experience due to being an underclassman, how will that affect our application? Is having prior research experience necessary to become a Smart Scholarship recipient?
So the short answer is no, it's not. And our undergraduates and our graduate applications or applicants are evaluated sort of in separate sandboxes. So if you're a freshman right now applying for your sophomore year and beyond, you don't have to worry that you're competing against a first or second year PhD student who's looking, to finish their dissertation. Still, even within, say, the undergraduate pool, there's still a wide range of experiences, right? There are people who are freshmen who have not yet had a whole lot of opportunity for those experiences. And there are upperclassmen who maybe have, obviously advanced a little bit more in their coursework and maybe some opportunities for different projects and research with a professor. But no, that shouldn't necessarily discourage you from applying. We award plenty of scholarships to soon-to-be sophomores as undergraduates. And so being able to, it's no one thing. Being able to craft a narrative of through your personal statements of interest to you, your academic achievements thus far, whether they be through high school or so far in college, your own statements, the letters of references. It's really a whole picture that's evaluated. So just because you don't necessarily have a whole lot of extracurricular technical background and internships and projects and research and things like that, doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply. You absolutely should.
Excellent, thank you. Quite a few questions as well, asking specifically, what do you look for in an applicant?
So actually, Dima, do you want to go through maybe the sections of the application, and then maybe I can speak to a little bit more broadly as to how we tie those all together to evaluate?
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to just list out all of those different sections? So you do have to include your academic background, high school, and list your colleges. The proposed area of study section, that's where you'll let us know the school that you'll be going to if offered an award. So next fall, August 2021. Your facility preferences, you'll want to include top 3 facility preferences. And again, you can look through those on our website. You'll want to include your professional experiences. So that's where you'll also upload your resume. make sure your resume is up to date as well. It's important. There are two separate sections for the personal statement. One, you'll provide a summary of your educational and professional goals, and one, you will provide a summary of your interests and research. And then there's a few different sections where you can list out any community or volunteer work, leadership experiences, teamwork experiences, any awards and honors that you've received as well.
Yeah, so, you know, we kind of take all of those things and put them into 4 or 5 big buckets. One is the academic achievements, your grades, your transcripts, any academic awards or publications that you might have. There is your personal statement. There is your research goals. There are your leadership experiences, and then the letters of recommendation. And so our evaluators will evaluate all of those pieces of information sort of in the context of those 4 or 5 buckets to make a holistic judgment of your application.
Great, thank you. A number of questions as well, Dr. Kochenauer and Dima, about scores and test scores. One of our attendees specifically asks, since GRE scores are optional and will not be evaluated, is it worth getting them sent officially by ETS?
So, you know, as Dima mentioned, test scores are optional, and by optional, we mean they aren't considered in the evaluations. The reviewers will not see them. And so if you want to submit them, that's up to you. But GREs, SATs, ACT scores are not a part of our review this year.
Thank you. I would just like to mention one thing beforehand. Again, if you don't have an opportunity to have your question answered here today, feel free to reach out to smart@smartscholarship.org. We do have quite a bit of time left to answer questions, but in the event that you do not, smart@smartscholarship.org. Next question that we have is from Madeline. Madeline says, the essay prompts say to provide a summary of current educational program objectives and long-range professional goals, but the minimum word count is 2,500 words. What is out of bounds for the scope of this summary? For background, I am someone returning to university after being in the professional world for 10 plus years. Should I talk about my professional life as well as academic life?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty important, right? I mean, there's not a whole lot of guidance as to, and somewhat intentional, right? Because everybody has different experiences. Everybody's coming to this with a different set of experiences, whether they're coming back to get a STEM degree after being in the professional world for a while, or if you're a 19-year-old freshman in college who's just starting their technical journey. So that's really an opportunity for you to tell us a bit about you and what's shaped your drive so far, and where you think you want to go with it, and how SMART can be a part of that.
So also real quick about those essays. So they are very short. It's not 2,500 words, but 2,500 characters. So do keep that in mind when if you choose to type those out in a Word doc before copy pasting them into the application, it's a character count, not a word count.
Thank you both. A few questions around eligibility requirements. If either you, Dr. Kochenauer, or Dima, could elaborate a little bit more around the age requirement. We have had a couple of questions. I'll read one specific question from our attendee who says, my birthday is August 5th, so I will not be 18 before August 1st. Can an exception be made?
Generally, the short answer is no. Also really important in that, and just kind of scrolling through the chat, seeing it come up, is this question of I'm in high school, but I've taken college credit. Does that count? So if you're able to produce a transcript from a university that shows you have those credits, that's really what we're looking for. Things like governor's school or some other kind of summer camp that happened to be at a university is not necessarily the same as credits and something on a university transcript that you can provide. So I hope that that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. Next question from Paul. Are we allowed to apply even if we already have a scholarship?
So some sort of different scholarship, presumably, not a SMART scholarship, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yes, but with caveats. So what you need to be mindful of is that there is, it can't be some other federal scholarship that also attaches on the same kind of expectations and commitment that SMART does. So if you've got a scholarship, some sort of merit-based scholarship through your university because you've got great grades and they are giving you an award, that's great, right? You can hang on to that. If it's some other program that's similar to SMART, where it's saying we're going to give you, we're also going to give you tuition and pay your tuition, and we're also going to require you to do this, that, and the other, and be employed, somewhere when you're done, then that becomes a conflict of interest.
Perfect, thank you. Next question is around references. Did the requirement to submit 3 references change to 2?
It did, and Dima can follow up with this in case I say something maybe unclear. You can submit up to 5. We will consider up to 3. You must have at least 2. Did I get all that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, correct. So, and then to address that question, yes, it did change from a minimum of 3 to now a minimum of 2.
Yeah, and the perfect segue into one of the next questions that we have. I'm going to summarize the question here. Essentially, Madeline's saying that she has 4 references. She's trying to figure out how to best choose the top 3. Anything that she should keep in mind when she's trying to choose her top 3 references?
Not anything other than what I mentioned before, right? So you got to identify who those people are that are giving you the best mix of understanding your technical abilities and interacting with you in that capacity, as well as your leadership and your future potential as a S&T professional within the DoD.
Okay. Joshua asks, do you consider current co-op students to be do you consider current co-op students to be full-time part-term or summer hire in the professional experiences section?
Oh, so if you're a co-op, do I list that as a professional experience, or do I list that somewhere else? Am I understanding that correctly?
So let me read that again. Do you consider current co-op students to be full-time, part-term, or summer hire in the professional experiences section?
Dima, I don't know if we have a stance here. I think really probably what's important is that you tell us about it somehow, right?
Right. So if you're a co-op right now and you're performing an internship, maybe at a facility, that's what that professional experiences section is for. So you would only want to fill out full-time or term employee if you are not in school and you're a full-time DoD employee. Summer hire and intern would be sounds like it might fit more with the co-op student internship programs. But that's basically what that professional experiences section is for, is to kind of let us know if you're currently working with the DoD or not. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thanks, Seema. Yeah, so while most of our applicants are coming in as what we call a recruitment scholar, right, not currently employed by a DoD anywhere, we do have about 10 to 15% or so of scholars that are already working at a DoD lab and are going back to school. And that's the section where they would capture that they're currently employed with a DoD laboratory or agency somewhere. So if you're a co-op, it's probably not really, we probably wouldn't really consider that a full-time employment.
Perfect. A lot of great questions, and we have quite a few questions here this afternoon, but luckily still quite a bit of time left. So
keep bringing them.
Yeah, so this next one we have says this: who selects the awardees? The sponsors or a board is put together for this? So it sounds like they're trying to figure out who's selecting awardees.
Right. No, that's a great question. So it's kind of layered. So let me walk you through what happens after December 1st. Starting in January, all applicants will be reviewed by a panel of DoD professionals and members of academia who will score and evaluate applications according to those buckets that I mentioned earlier. At the same time, the program is reaching out to all of the sponsoring facilities across Army, Navy, Air Force, DoD, and other DoD to understand what their requirements are, right? We need so many electrical engineers, or I really need somebody in physics with some expertise in quantum wizardry, whatever it is. Once that initial evaluation is done by the panel, we will make what we call semifinalist awards. And so those awards are based both on the evaluations that were done and the potential need from the sponsoring facilities. So if you're a semifinalist, your name and application goes on the list that then gets distributed out to all of the SMART sponsoring facilities. And those sponsoring facilities then go and look at applications and resumes and see what people might match their needs. They might look at the folks that say they want to go to their particular sponsoring facility, but oftentimes awards are made not necessarily because a scholar said, this is one of my top three. That happens all the time. So we go from all of the applicants down to the semifinalists. The sponsors facilities make selections based on that semifinalist pool, and then we'll make awards based on the sponsoring facilities selections sometime in the spring. So a lot of different eyes are looking, whether it be to evaluate and then to select.
Great, thank you. Question surrounding sponsoring facility placements. How successful are the sponsoring facility placements? Are participants happy with their placement? And lastly, are the sponsoring facility placements meeting their goals and outcomes? Let me know if you'd like me to read that again.
No, I think I get the tenor of the question. So, you know, one of the things that the program has started to do in the past few years is during the summer, in between the time an award is made and the time August 1st rolls around, where you officially would become a SMART scholar, we send you to your sponsoring facility. So you get to meet the leadership there. You get to see the area in which you will eventually live if you're not familiar with it geographically already. You'll understand the work that sponsoring facility does and their mission, and kind of start to get acclimated a little bit, just to make sure that it's a good fit on both sides of the table. With the internships, right, it's not just a internship. It's also a way for you to kind of understand the culture of the facility, for your mentors and future managers to start interacting with you and get to know your interests and strengths, so that by the time you get done with your degree, there's no ambiguity left on kind of what you'll be doing. Hopefully, right now you're acclimated enough and you've been involved in the work enough that you can start your first day of employment not having to get up to speed on anything, right? Because you've already been involved in the work over the internships. A lot of our graduate students, PhD and master's students, will sort of vector their research to align with their sponsoring facilities. They're sponsoring, perhaps a mentor at the sponsoring facility will sit on the dissertation committee, right? So that there's some good synergy there, all in an effort to make sure that by the time that you get to that employment phase, you've got a leg up on anyone else who might just be walking in off the street, not really kind of knowing what the work entails.
Excellent, thank you. Alma asks, what determines the ability to obtain a security clearance?
What determines the ability to obtain a security clearance? There are a lot of things, and those are usually taken care of through some administrative forms early on. If there are specific concerns that you might have regarding a clearance, I would probably ask you to maybe reach out to us through email, and we can kind of discuss those individually. I would say that the vast majority of our scholars don't have any initial issues with the clearance process.
Okay, next question we have is, if I apply at a university and get accepted after December 1st, would it be too late for my SMART application to be considered?
You want to read that one again?
Sure. If I apply at a university and get accepted after December 1st, would it be too late for my SMART application to be considered?
No. So you have to have at least applied to a university. So this is usually what happens with the graduate students, is that they don't quite know where they're going to go to graduate school. They put in a bunch of applications, but by the time December 1st rolls around, they don't know where they've been accepted yet or where they're going to go. As long as you applied to those schools, that's all that's important. We would ask, though, that by the time that you're awarded in the spring, that you've identified where it is you're going to do your degree. Dima, is there anything there that I missed? Or you didn't want to add?
No, that sounds about right. But one thing for grad students, so if you're still applying and you're unsure of where you'll be next year, you can indicate that you're undecided on the application for your proposed institute. That's usually typically just for graduate students, because again, you have to have just applied. When it comes to your master's or PhD, you don't have to be in the program at the time of your application, again, for graduate students, not undergraduate students. So you can indicate undecided on your application, and if you're offered an award, we'll follow up with you to see where you've been accepted and what the final university selection is.
Thank you. So just a reminder, I see that we're about 10 minutes before the 2 o'clock hour. We are extending our session here this afternoon, so there still is plenty of time to stick around and to ask questions during this session. Again, if you don't have an opportunity, smart@smartscholarship.org will respond to your question outside of this event. Next question. Is the undergrad scholarship awarded annually or per semester?
All awards are awarded annually. Your tuition is paid directly by SMART, that goes between us and the university. Your stipend is paid monthly through direct deposit, as well as the allowances for books and health insurance.
Okay. As a veteran, one of the attendees asked, as a veteran, do prior commanding officers work well as references or military supervisor?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say those people can all speak to your leadership potential and have seen you, seen you work in person. Yeah, let's hear from them.
Okay. Next question. One part of the application asks about the research, or have you? One part of the application asks about the research, or have you done any specific research at your institution? What if you haven't, but you did volunteering mentoring kids in science?
Yeah, so that would probably go under volunteer experiences. I'm probably not getting the name right. Dima might be able to help me out there.
Yeah, there is a community and volunteer work section where we ask you to put the title of the volunteer experience, a brief description, and then I believe a point of contact or a reference, just the name. We won't, they don't need to upload anything.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We have a question from Quadwo asking, will the recording be sent via email? We'll make sure that this recording is posted to our website at smartscholarship.org, www.smartscholarship.org. Within the next week. It'll be under our resources page. We have a question from another attendee. If I were awarded the SMART Scholarship for 2021, would I be able to forego the internship until summer of 2022? Or do I need to have to participate in the internship the year it is awarded to me?
So if I think I'm following the timeline here, and maybe I'll walk through this again. So we are coming up on 21. The awards will be made in April of 2021 for the semester starting in the fall of 21, right? So there's a little bit of a period in between the time that we say, congratulations, you're a SMART scholar, to when your scholarship officially starts the following August. So right now you are all applying to start scholarship in August of 2021. So you would start your scholarship in fall of 21. You would do that semester, you would do spring of 2022, and then your first internship would be the summer of 2022.
Thank you. Another one on volunteering, the volunteering section, it looks like. For community and volunteer, if you were a part of a sorority on campus, how will you look at that since it's community and volunteering?
Yeah, tell us about it. Tell us what you've done, what activities you've done, any leadership that you may have had, involvement that you may have had with that. Dima, anything there you want to add?
No, I would just say in the description section, if it's for the community and volunteer work, make sure you explain what the volunteer work is that you did while you were in that specific group.
Perfect. Guadalupe asks, since this year has been mainly virtual, how did the internships work? Were they virtual and did they run smoothly?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, this year, everyone was trying to figure out how to make things work, and in the best interest of the health of the scholars, we waived the internship requirement for our scholars. There have been no decisions yet on what will happen this summer. Nobody quite knows what things will look like by the time we get to this summer. And then for all you, now we're really talking about the summer of 2022. That's even further ahead. It's a little bit hard to answer. We did have some scholars that applied to do and work with their sponsoring facilities to do virtual internships, which seemed to work out okay. But really, I wish I had a little bit better of a crystal ball to tell you how things were gonna go this summer. But certainly this past summer, it was in the best interest of the scholars, we felt, just to kind of hit pause, and understanding that, yeah, everyone's really looking forward to being engaged and doing that internship, both the scholar and the sponsoring facility. Keep an ear to the ground to see kind of what happens this summer, and obviously things will be changing rapidly, I imagine, over the next year and a half by the time you all would do your internship.
Yeah, quite a few questions here as well about expectations, specifically work expectations. Brigham asks, what are the work responsibilities if we were awarded the SMART scholarship? For instance, will we be expected to work weekends?
So I'm not sure if that's asking while you're a scholar or during your internship period or your employment. I guess it probably doesn't matter. There are not really any abnormal work requirements. I'm trying to maybe understand the context of the question. During your internship period, you will work out a work schedule based on the work that's going on at your facility. A lot of facilities offer flexible work schedules, compressed work schedules where you work, extra hours certain days, and then, every other week you get a Friday off. There are, it varies as you go across the labs. There is a requirement while you're a scholar that if you have outside employment, you're, waiting tables or working at the library or doing something while you're doing your degree, that it be no more than a certain number of hours that's, published in our scholar handbook. And that's to make sure that, your commitment is to your coursework, and, not being pulled aside by outside employment.
Okay,
so hopefully some version of that answered your question.
So, and just to add on, so while you're in school, you can't work over, I believe it's 16 hours a week if you're doing something else on the side. But with the tuition and the stipends, you should be focusing on school.
Perfect, thank you. Question about how applicants are selected. So are candidates selected from a similar pool of applicants, such as sophomores against sophomores, or undergrads competing against graduate students?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, the undergraduates and the graduate students play in different sandboxes. So as an undergraduate, you don't have to worry about competing against a first or second year PhD student. Within the undergraduate pool, we don't sort of delegate or divvy up any further than that. Your applications, we try to match your field with the expertise of the reviewers. So if you're an electrical engineering student, we work really hard to make sure that your application is reviewed by electrical engineers within the department or electrical engineering faculty members at universities. So there's not necessarily an electrical engineering pool or all sophomore physics students are evaluated separately from anyone else. We don't necessarily divvy things up that far.
All right, I have a question from Nate, and I'll read his statement. What if the student is not positive about graduation date? with COVID, some colleges are not offering as many courses in typical 4-year graduation for engineering/science may not be possible. Should the student say 5 years? If they finish earlier or later, how would that impact SMART?
Yeah, so this is, that's a great question and kind of reflective of this new reality that we're in. My suggestion would be to apply based on what would, where you would normally be. So if you're, normally at a 4-year institution and a 4-year degree, and you would be starting SMART your sophomore year, you would make your award 3 years, right? There are mechanisms to modify your award based on certain circumstances. COVID, I think, would certainly be one of them, and that's something that we've seen and we've adapted to. And the Scholar Handbook, if awarded, would sort of lay out the conditions on when you could or couldn't modify that award. But within the context of what's happening right now, yes, there is some flexibility in doing those modifications if your initial estimate needs to be changed. Now, I'll add the caveat here that those changes are all sort of the final approval is by the component, right? And sort of your sponsoring facility has to provide concurrence and is ultimately approved by someone who sits at the top of the Army, Navy, Air Force, or other DoD.
All right, quite a few questions again around statistics. Could you either give a few statistics around recipients, so the applicants who is typically awarded that, or point us in the right direction, please?
So Dima, there's some information that we have on the website, right? At least the past 2 years on some statistics.
Yes, so on our resources page, we do have a list of our award stats for 2019 and 2020. So they're also interactive. So if you're looking for a specific discipline or component, all that information is listed on the website. So again, that's on smartscholarship.org. If you click on resources, you'll see all of the award statistics for the past 2 years.
I want to add, though, when you do go and look at that, you'll see that there are certain disciplines that are maybe more popular in terms of the people that apply and are awarded based on the DoD need. But if you see an area, if you're a physics major or biomedical engineering or geosciences, don't be concerned when you go and see that there are not as many of those awards as there are computer science, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that that you don't have a chance. Again, it's a combination of your application as a scholar, a potential scholar, and a DoD need. And so when those two things come together, an award is made.
Perfect. Speaking about majors, while you're in the program, can you change majors within the STEM field?
Well, it doesn't happen often, because remember, the sponsoring facilities are making an investment in you, right? So at the time you're awarded, you're saying, I'm getting a degree in mechanical engineering. Here are my interests. Here's where I'm going to go to school. Here's how long it's going to take. And a sponsoring facility is making that investment so that they're going to hire somebody with that expertise and that degree level in the time that you say it's going to happen. So if partway through your degree pursuit, you decide, actually, no, I want to be a biomedical engineer, not a mechanical engineer, that change and to stay within the program is sort of contingent on whether or not the sponsoring facility can support that. So this is where communication with your sponsoring facility mentor is really key, and potential management, so that if you know, you identify, hey, you know, this isn't really working out, but based on my internship, you know, I could maybe go to this other field, and I know that my sponsoring facility would really support that because they also have this new, you know, whatever the different type of engineer is, and you can have those conversations and get that support. That's a different story. But to it is not typical that somebody enters the program and then just sort of randomly changes their degree pursuit without a lot of reason and foundation. And again, that sponsoring facility approval and concurrence.
Thanks. Next question about being a dual citizen. Will I be at a disadvantage for being a dual citizen?
Will you be at a disadvantage for being a dual citizen? I do not believe you'll be at a disadvantage, but if you have some questions, let's have you email the smart@smartscholarship.org and talk about your situation specifically within a little bit more detail.
Yeah, perfect. Next question, what are some things to steer clear of in the essay portions?
Some things to steer clear of. It's a bit open-ended. I don't know. I mean, I think we've talked about things that we want to hear about. Again, you know, it's sort of intentionally broad because we want you to bring your experiences to it, right? Tell us something about you that we don't get from looking at the transcripts or the resumes or the GPA or, you know, your volunteer experiences. This is sort of your voice to make and to advocate for yourself as to why you think you'd make a smart scholarship or a good smart scholar. Dima, do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think basically everything you just said, and just really why you want to be a smart scholar. So why you're applying to this program, why you think what you've done up until now will make you the next smart scholar. So just as Dr. Kochenauer said, just make it personal as well, in addition to everything else we've said.
I will say this, and this is a little bit of inside baseball, I guess, from experience in reviewing applications prior to coming on as a deputy program manager. But remember what the Smart Scholarship is about, right? We're looking for people that are interested in being S&T professionals in the Department of Defense. And so if your goal professionally is to be a doctor or to do something, however admirable it might be, but that isn't really related or untethered to the department of the mission, then that doesn't really kind of make a whole lot of sense. Not that those things, whatever those might be, right, aren't admirable, and we want you to go do that if that's what you want to, you want to pursue. Not saying that there's somehow any less value in that, but remember what the program is about, right? And we're looking to have you contribute to the next generation of DoD science and technology. And so it would behoove you to craft your narrative around that. Not saccharine, right? We can, evaluators can see through the fluff and the puff and right? Be honest, be open. You don't have to come waving a flag and telling us, on why, you're somehow more patriotic than someone else. It's not about that. That's not what we're asking you to do. Just keep in mind what it is the mission of the program is all about.
Thank you for that. Looks like we've got about 5 minutes left for a few more questions here. So I want to have a retention question read aloud. I'm a current DoD civilian applying as a recruitment scholar for a different sponsoring facility. Is it possible to remain a federal employee for the duration of the scholarship to avoid a break-in service, i.e. LWOP?
So you're a current DoD employee, you would sounds like you would be resigning from your current position to be a recruitment participant at a different facility. So because you wouldn't be employed by that other facility yet, you would be a recruitment participant, right, and not employed with the DoD. If for some reason that other DoD facility decided to hire you before your degree was completed, then you would be a retention participant. But there are a lot of gears that kind of have to turn in order for that to happen. So if you've got a specific circumstance that you'd like to talk through with us, send us an email.
Perfect. Are certain sites, sponsoring facilities, more competitive than others?
Well, I don't know if I would say competitive. Again, the number of slots that each component has is sort of dependent on, one, the budget for the year that comes from Congress, right, to the SMART program. And then two, what the needs of the Army, Navy, Air Force, and other DoD facilities are. So there is a lead for SMART, someone within the Department of Defense on top of the Navy, Air Force, Army, other DoD, that is making a decision based on their component's needs as to how many potential positions each facility is going to get to make SMART awards. And then those facilities then go out and sort of make their own selections. So, it's hard to sort of trace, are there certain facilities that scholars really want to get into that's maybe harder than others, because it's kind of a two-way street, right? It's the scholars that are saying, here are the areas that I think I want to go, and then there's the sponsoring facilities and components that are saying, here are the people that I want, and here's how many slots I have allocated to me. And those things all kind of come together as we make an award.
Okay, looks like we have time for one, maybe two more questions. Jackson says, I found it difficult to identify a particular DoD facility that would match my technical interests. What might be the most concise and straightforward way to find the objectives at a specific facility?
Yeah, so I'd go to the facility's website, make sure you're digging around there, find news releases and articles that might be relevant. If you're saying that you found a facility, but you don't think that they're involved with what you really want to do, then you haven't found a facility yet, right? There's probably somewhere else that might be more aligned. Remember though that, again, it's a two-way street. So you may put your top three, but if you're a semifinalist, your application is going to go out to everyone, and all of the facilities are going to be able to look and say, if you've got an interest in aerospace and hypersonics, and someone at some other sponsored facility that's maybe not on your radar can go and filter by those applications and find you, right, and potentially make that selection. So, depending on where you're at, if you're an undergraduate, maybe you're looking broadly at the type of work that they do, go to the website, through our website, and find that information. If you're a graduate student, interact with your faculty, ask them if any of them are doing work with a DoD sponsor, and who are they doing it through, what contacts do they have with other researchers in industry. Go do literature searches in topic areas to see if any authors come up that are associated with DoD labs. There are lots of different ways to kind of, probe to see more specifically what kind of work each facility does.
Greg, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I was saying excellent. Thank you. Looks like we have time for about one more quick question before we go ahead and wrap it up. And that question is, do you enter the DoD, Department of Defense, as an intern or employee?
So after you've finished your degree, you will be converted to a full-time employee. During your internship period, you're paid by SMART. Your stipends are paid by SMART. Even during your internship periods, until you complete that degree. And then once you complete that degree, your sponsoring facility is the one that does the hiring action. SMART can't tell you what your salary will be, what level you will be, any of that. That's all handled by the sponsoring facilities. They can usually give you an idea of what things are like during your sort of initial get to know you period before you take the scholarship, and again as you're an intern. But that's not something SMART does not hire. The components or the facility does that hiring. Thank you, Dr.
Kochenauer. So with that being the last question, it's that time to go ahead and wrap up our webinar. I would encourage everyone to go to our website, www.smartscholarship.org. We have a really robust resources page there with plenty of application tip videos. We're also on YouTube. You could find us on social media, or you could reach out and ask questions again to smart@smartscholarship.org. We have an entire team that's standing by ready to answer your specific questions. So just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to join here today, and we look forward to seeing your application before the December 1st deadline.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.